Our Australian Grand Prix F1 driver ratings. There's some polarizing grades that have been locked in from me, so cannot wait. Let's start with Logan Sargent, Logie Bear. Qualified 18th, did not finish. Shocker of a weekend, I would say, for Logan Sargent. And it's a 2 out of 10 for me. As much as he had a good start in Bahrain, he just wasn't really anywhere pace-wise, and then decided to send Nyck de Vries into the Shadow Realm in the final stage of the restart. If you actually watch the replay, you just see right at the top, Logan destroying Nyck.
Yeah, bad times. I've gone also for a 2 out of 10. I'm so sorry.
We were supposed to disagree!
I know, I'm sure we will later. But this one, it's a 2 out of 10. Yeah, he was very poor. 6 tenths off Albon in qualifying, which I know he's a rookie, but that's a big old gap. And this is exactly the kind of race where Williams should be picking up points. The car was good. Only 12 people finished the race. It would be a 1 out of 10, but he gets an extra point because he's a rookie. I'm giving him the benefit of the doubt.
Let's move to Alex Albon now then, shall we? Qualified 8th, did not finish.
He didn't. Alex Albon is also getting a 2 out of 10 for me. Seems strange to give him the same grade as Logan Sargent when Albon was so much quicker, but for me, I have to rate this as almost like a Charles Leclerc at France, or a huge kind of big profile mistake, because this is a Williams track, and that was a huge opportunity for points. That was, if they'd have finished 5th or 6th, that's like a race victory for them. And Alex Albon threw that away. Yeah, big mistake from Alex. So 2 out of 10.
Okay, I'm going to give Alex a 3 out of 10. I feel as though if I'm going to take either Alex's performance or Logan's performance, I'm going to take Alex's all day long, purely because he had shown incredible pace. He had an amazing qualifying, and I feel like anything less than 3 is harsh. But on the flip side of that, the reason why he's getting a 3 is because he's binned it. He's thrown away an amazing opportunity in that car to score some really good points. We now go to Nyck de Vries. Qualified 15th, did not finish. We're getting all the DNFs out the way. It's because, yeah, it's not done in DNF order. This is just purely the lower teams to the top teams. But de Vries, I'm giving him a 3 out of 10. He's not having a good start to this year, and it's kind of going along. I don't want to be like, oh, I told you so, but also I am absolutely going to say that I predicted this, and that him being put on this pedestal after Monza was only ever going to be a bit of a backfire, in my opinion, because that Williams worked incredibly well. He did a great job, but to judge him on what he would be able to bring as a driver straight away after one performance in Monza was maybe a little bit trigger happy from a lot of people. And Nyck de Vries is clearly showing he is struggling with getting up to speed in that AlphaTauri, but also getting anywhere near Yuki Tsunoda.
So I've gone for a 4 out of 10 for Nyck de Vries. Yeah, it's just not a great time. He doesn't get kind of that bad because he didn't crash, I guess, when other people did, but he's just off the pace at the moment. And I know the AlphaTauri isn't a great car, but yeah, he just doesn't look very quick.
We now go to his teammate Yuki Tsunoda, who qualified 12th, finished 10th, and could have very well been 5th, or maybe even 4th, who knows. Yuki, what did you make of him, Tommy?
Yuki, I've given an 8 out of 10. I think he drove a great race, finally got a point. If Sainz hadn't got his penalty, he would have finished 11th for the third race in a row, which would have been absolute pain. He's been doing really good this season, kind of stepping up. Should have backed him, but I'm very proud of him. He's kind of team leader-esque. And so, yeah, Yuki's been driving great, and I'm glad he got some points. A point.
Yeah, I think he will have to perform more in the sort of Pierre Gasly stealing all the headlines-esque performances like Gasly did previously at the team. I've also given him an 8 out of 10. I think that it was a really impressive performance. As I mentioned, I think that he's outperforming that AlphaTauri and where it deserves to be. And now every single team has scored at least 1 point in the first 3 races, which is lovely. Nico Hulkenberg is next on our list. Qualified 10th, finished the race in 7th. I'm going to give my biggest good surprise a 9 out of 10. I think Nico drove incredibly well over the course of the whole weekend. He trounced his teammate, absolutely left him in the dust. And if we think about how much we were lauding Kevin Magnussen last year, it sort of shows just how good of a driver Nico Hulkenberg is. Overall, a brilliant weekend. Could have easily been a podium had that had standard the final restart. But yeah, fully deserves a 9 out of 10 for me.
Yeah, I've gone for 9 out of 10 for Hulkenberg as well. This is exactly the kind of performance that I thought he would bring to the table. This was the kind of solid drive to a very good points finish that we expected.
Kevin Magnussen qualified 14th, didn't finish.
Right, Kevin Magnussen, I have gone for a 2 out of 10. Kevin Magnussen was nowhere near his teammate and then binned it in the wall completely on his own. But yeah, Kevin Magnussen was very woeful. So yeah, 3 out of 10.
I've also gone for a 2 out of 10 for K-Mag. It just hasn't been good enough. And if he can't get anywhere near what Nico Hulkenberg is achieving, then questions are going to start to be asked. And I genuinely felt as though it was going to be a bit of a ding-dong battle between Hulkenberg and Magnussen over the course of this year. Magnussen, of course, had some great performances last year. So why would you not expect that going into this year as well? So a poor start to the season. I don't imagine it will last forever, but let's see. We now go to Lance Stroll, qualified 6th, finished 4th. I'm going to give Lance a 5 out of 10. I don't think it was actually a particularly great performance from Lance. Of course, he made that huge error as well at the restart, which would have cost him everything. He literally got stuck in the wall. Up until that point beforehand, it wasn't that great of a performance. He wasn't, again, on Alonso's sort of level. I don't think we can continue to say, he's still hurting, or his wrists, or, we can take that into account. The 5 might seem harsh, but that's more about the fact that he's a very lucky boy that he didn't get penalised for that huge mistake.
I have gone for a 6 out of 10. P4, I think, flatters him from what he actually did in that race from his performance. Aston Martin will take that all day long. P4 seems like a great result.
Okay, we now go to Fernando Alonso. Qualified 4th, finished 3rd.
Another P3 for Fernando, but this time I'm giving him an 8 out of 10, just because I think P2 might have been available. I know the Mercedes looked good, but I think Fernando, maybe a better qualifying, could have just pipped Hamilton in qualifying, and he might have beaten him in the race. He was quick, consistent, and just driving brilliantly. But even me, as the Fernando Alonso fanboy, has to just take a mark off from his usual 9 out of 10, just because I think P2 might have been possible in that car if maybe he just qualified a bit better.
I agree. I've also gone for an 8 out of 10. I think that he left something on the table in qualifying, which eventually scuppered his chances, I think, of beating Hamilton in the race. And of course, if Russell hadn't have DNF'd, Alonso was most likely going to finish 4th. Apart from that, he was obviously very close to Lewis, and I feel as though we were a little bit let down by the prospect of those two fighting, and we thought Fernando was just keeping his tyres in check for the final few stages of the race, but it didn't come to fruition. But it's still a brilliant drive. We now go to Valtteri Bottas, qualified 19th, finished 11th, and you look at that on paper and you go, that's a lovely little comeback drive from Valtteri. So unlucky to not score points. No, 2 out of 10. What the hell is this man doing at the moment? He looks fly. Like, I've never seen him look so vibrant in all my life. But my God, there is no vibrancy in the way he's driving at the moment. He's getting beaten by ZHOU quite convincingly. And he just seems to be having these literal Sunday drives at the back of the field. You just go, why is Bottas last?
Appalling from Valtteri. I've given him a 3 out of 10 just because he managed to keep it out the wall. But like you say,
Valtteri, a man of so many Grand Prix, has won constructors' titles with Mercedes. You are happy in giving him an extra point for keeping it out of the wall?
Well, it's awful. 3 out of 10 is still awful, and he drove awful. Like you say, qualified second to last, finished second to last, and yeah, just absolutely dreadful.
Well done, Bottas, for finishing the race and being one of the only finishers that didn't score points. Now we go to his teammate ZHOU GUANYU, qualified 16th, finished 9th.
I'm going to go for a 7 out of 10 for ZHOU GUANYU. Think that he's doing a good job in that Alfa Romeo that looks very bad. In the last few races, the Alfa has not looked very good. Genuinely looks like one of the worst cars on the grid.
Okay, yeah, I've also given him a 7 out of 10. I think that can't give him any more, even though he has scored a couple of points in probably the worst car in the grid. A lot of that is down to good fortune and the fact that both Alpines couldn't finish the race is one example. Of course, Sainz getting the penalty as well, but that's not to take away the fact that he is beating Bottas, and he's beaten him in 2 of the last 3 races. And that's not what anyone really expected when that pairing came together. We now go to Oscar Piastri, qualified 16th, finished the race in 8th. I'm going with a 7 out of 10 for Oscar Piastri. I don't think he's lighting up the timesheets. He's not lighting up maybe how much potential he has within him right now, but I think he's steadily making progress. He's by no means anywhere as far off Lando as Daniel Ricciardo was. And that's all you can ask for in the first 3 races of your Formula 1 career. I've been impressed with Oscar, so yeah, 7.
I've also gone for a 7 out of 10. It's just a kind of, I think 7 out of 10 is like a, yeah, good, decent, not amazing, but also not bad. And I think that describes his drive perfectly. And he was rewarded by just kind of being all right and decent and avoiding any mistakes. So yeah, I think a 7 out of 10 is deserved.
Lando Norris, qualified 13th, finished the race in 6th.
Lando Norris, I have gone for a 9 out of 10. I think it was back to the old Lando Norris. I think, what did we give him last race? Was it like a 2 out of 10, I think? I gave him and said that it's probably the worst race of his career. I think that was one of his better ones and showed exactly why he's highly rated, back to his best. And yeah, he looked like he was actually going to potentially even beat Sergio Perez. He stayed ahead of him for a long time in that woeful McLaren, which had no straight line speed at all, and just drove incredibly well. Really solid performance, and then yeah, rewarded with a brilliant P6, which is a hell of a lot of points.
Yeah, very much back to the Lando that we all know and love. I've also given him a 9 out of 10, so much for us disagreeing on things. He's much better. Confidence is back up. Saudi was a blip in his career, and he's very much now back to scoring points in a car that, both of them, to be fair, how they both made progress in a car that looked like it went slower when it opened DRS is quite something to behold. So good job, Lando. 9 out of 10. We now go to Pierre Gasly, qualified 9th, did not finish. This one's a hard one, isn't it? I'm going with a 4 out of 10 for Pierre Gasly. He drove probably 53 laps, up there with the best in his career. He was mixing it with the Ferraris and the Aston Martins and very much in with a shot of a podium. However, we then move to the mistake that he made at the restart. It can't be forgiven. I can't give him any higher than a 4 out of 10 when he goes off the track. His responsibility when rejoining the track is to be aware of your surroundings. He yeeted his own teammate into non-existence. I'm now thinking 4 out of 10 is too nice, but I'm going to stick with 4 because those first 53 laps were genuinely probably some of the best of his career. So there you go.
Pierre Gasly, I have been harsher and gone for a 3 out of 10. This would be a 9 out of 10 if we hadn't have had Kevin Magnussen going into war, because he was driving superbly, like you said. Brilliant drive. Think he would have been worthy of driver of the day. But the mistake at the end has to be punished.
Speaking of Esti Bestie, we now move to him. Esteban Ocon, qualified 11th, did not finish due to the reasons we have just mentioned.
Yeah, I've gone for a 5 out of 10. He's a very difficult driver to grade, so I've gone right down the middle. Wasn't as quick as his teammate. Slower in qualifying, which was surprising. And then, just got taken out, but wasn't really threatening the points or anything anyway. So yeah, just a 5 out of 10.
I'm going to give him a 6 out of 10, actually. It was a quieter race from Esti, but realistically, he was going to finish the race if it wasn't for his teammate sending him to the Shadow Realm. So I would, yeah, he wasn't on the pace of his teammate, but I think it was very marginal. He couldn't make as many positions up through the field either, and didn't seem to make a huge amount of progress. But that being said, he didn't make any catastrophic errors. We now go to Lewis Hamilton. Qualified third, finished the race in second. I have gone for a 9 out of 10 for Lewis. I feel as though it was a really strong performance from him, not only keeping Alonso behind for most of the race, but also the start. But Lewis, yeah, pulled an amazing move on Max to get into second. Couldn't do anything about keeping Max behind, but still had the pace to secure second place. Had a decent enough quali, obviously not as good as Russell, but still solid, and is a good step forward for Mercedes.
Yeah, good drive from Hamilton. I can't give him anything less than a 9 out of 10 because he was great in the race, held off Alonso with good pace. Yeah, good drive from Hamilton, 9 out of 10.
We now go to George Russell, who qualified second and did not finish.
Brilliant drive from him. I've gone for a 9 out of 10. Oh, I'm thinking about a 10, but no, I'm going to go for a 9 out of 10 just because what was going to happen. I watched the race back actually, and it would have been fascinating to see where he'd have actually come back out, because he'd obviously got that free pit stop behind the safety car, and when they went racing again, it's actually in a pretty good place. 9 out of 10, great start, got into the lead, beat Hamilton again 3-0 in qualifying. It's very, very impressive. So yeah, great drive from George.
I'm going to have to give George a 10 out of 10. Straight up fire performance from George. Did incredibly well in qualifying, outqualified his teammate again, beat Max off the line on the dirty side of the grid to take the lead, which then set up Hamilton to get into second as well. He made the strategy call with his team to come in early, which I think again was a great move, because I think he'd made up a position or two at the restart after Alex's crash. So I don't know what more George could have really done. I know he kicked himself a little bit about not getting pole position, but realistically, was that possible?
Against a Red Bull.
So 10 out of 10 for me. I can't give him the same as Lewis. So there you go. Perfect score. Well done, George. Carlos Sainz. Oh dear, oh dear, oh dear. Qualified 5th, finished the race in 12th. I am going to give Carlos a 5 out of 10. So this, again, he had such a good performance, a fantastic performance in the Australian Grand Prix. He was making moves left, right and centre. He looked like a man unleashed in that Ferrari. The reason I've given him a 5 and slightly better than Gasly is that I feel as though his penalty is slightly more 50-50. It was still his mistake, and I can see why he got the penalty, but I can also see the reasons why he shouldn't have got a penalty, and the fact it should have been very much deemed as a lap 1 shenanigan kind of incident, but I can't also not talk about how good he was.
I've gone for a 6 out of 10. Carlos, I think, was robbed a little bit. I think his penalty was harsh. If that never happened, looking at a 9 out of 10 potentially. He was brilliant. First race in this new era, I think, where I'd say he was comfortably better than Charles Leclerc all weekend.
We now move to Charles Leclerc. We'll get through this one very quickly indeed. Qualified 7th, didn't finish, Tommy.
Yeah, I've gone for a 3 out of 10 for Charles Leclerc.
Don't care about the reasons.
Not a great performance. Yeah. It's probably his worst performance pace-wise against Sainz. Didn't look particularly comfortable. It was a racing incident. I don't think he's completely faultless in it, but I can't really say like it's completely his fault like certain other drivers. So yeah, 3 out of 10. Not good at all from Charles.
It's also a 3 out of 10 from me, as much as that hurts me to say. Qualifying wasn't great. He got out-qualified by Carlos, which is not something we tend to see. He's usually a one-lap monster, but we didn't see that for the AusGP. And then the move, as much as, yes, it was a racing incident, neither driver got a penalty. He's rolled the dice slightly to try and make up positions because of a poor qualifying. Now, sometimes that'll pay off, sometimes that won't. It didn't pay off this weekend. Sergio Perez, qualified 20th, finished 5th. A gain of 15 positions. and I'm going to give him a 6 out of 10. Oh my goodness me. Am I horrible? I'm sure you'll let me know. It was an underwhelming performance from Perez in the fastest car on the grid by quite some margin. I know Max was, 10 seconds clear, and when everything sort of kicked off at the end, wasn't a gargantuan margin, but I guarantee Max is falling asleep at the wheel. He's not pushing to the extent in which...
He literally did at one point, went off.
Yeah, exactly. He's not pushing to the extent that... I mean, he didn't catch up to Norris anywhere nearly quick enough, in my opinion. It's not like Norris was on the back of a DRS train or anything. Yes, he has had issues this weekend, and maybe some of that is still ingrained in his car and perhaps in his head. But yeah, 5th, which should have been 7th if it wasn't for the Sainz and Gasly problems at the restart, which wasn't really where I'd expected him to be.
I've gone even harsher and gone for a 5 out of 10. Which I'm sure everyone in the comments will call me out for, but didn't really fly through the field. Like you say, he would have been 7th if it wasn't for some good fortune of the incident. And actually, he went off anyway on that restart before it got sent back. I think he had a really, really messy weekend.
Finally, Max Verstappen qualified first, finished first.
Yeah, I'm going for a 9 out of 10, which may seem weird when he started first and finished first, but wasn't the perfect weekend. Got overtaken by George at the start, had a little moment. You could say that, maybe he's so comfortable that it doesn't need to kind of push and worry too much, but it's not a 10 out of 10 completely perfect dominant drive. I think 9 out of 10 just because it wasn't perfect.
I'm going to go one worse. 8 out of 10 for me, for Max. I feel as though it wasn't a bulletproof weekend from him, and he, in some ways, put his victory in a small amount of jeopardy by getting passed by not one, but both Mercedes at the beginning. And I would have loved to have seen how that race would have unfolded with Russell having that extra the pit stop already done and dusted. I still think Max could have probably won, but that easy victory, the only way that was going to get put into some kind of question is by being passed by both of the Mercedes. And that's exactly what happened. Now, before we go, we need to crown our P1 driver of the weekend and why. Mine's George Russell, because he's 10 out of 10 in my books. Deserves it. I think that he is just staking his claim at this Mercedes team. What's your P1?
Because we're British bias scum, I have gone for Lando Norris. I think as well, after coming back from Saudi Arabia when he had a really poor performance, it could have quite easily got to him. The McLaren's not very good. He could quite easily have Bottas, for example, just kind of in a bit of a lull and just carry it on to the next race. But no, came back fighting, and I think he did very well.
Cool. All right. Thanks, everybody. Bye.
Bye.